So we're going to do a quick run through of the BP. Now there's obviously a lot of creators doing videos on this. I'm not going to read skill by skill. I'm going to give you my quick overall thoughts. I think I read through this one twice, and on the whole, I feel like there's not going to be major meta shifts, but I'm just going to give you my quick thoughts because I think there was some really interesting stuff in here. Now, the first thing that stands out, obviously, there was no Oliver nerf, there was no Windy nerf. I don't know how many people out there outside of tournament level Siege care about the Windy nerf, but the people in tournament level Siege want a Windy nerf as much as the people in Guardian RTA want an Oliver nerf. But there was no Windy nerf. I am a little bit surprised about that, to be honest. Alright, this is going to be too small on my screen. I just need to open this up in another window so I can read it on full screen. Let's go desktop link. And then Marcus, we're going to do your summons right after the BP thing. This should be relatively quick, I think. So, Light Totemist, I'll be honest, I don't know her kit that much. I know people with Light Totemist felt like she needed a buff for a long time. I've talked to one person who had it. Didn't think the buff was enough, but I really don't have an opinion here because I don't know enough about the Light Totemist. Daphnis buff. The main thing I see here is they took away the Nemesis counter, and a lot of this is because will runes are fading out of the meta. Daphnis was still being drafted in G3. He's still going to be an RNG style monster, but I think we'll see a little bit more after. Daphnis was still getting drafted in RT, I meant to say. I think we'll see a little bit more Daphnis next turn. The fact that he no longer needs the unit to have will, it makes sense. I don't think he needed the qualifier. There's lots of monsters that can nuke turn 1. Claire being another one of those, I'm not even positive that Daphnis makes more sense than Claire right now. I was testing my build on a 308 Daphnis, needing lots of accuracy and other crap. I do like 45,000 damage. I think my Claire can get pretty close to that in a similar rune set because she doesn't need the accuracy. So it's a needed buff for Daphnis. It's not game changing either way, but it is a buff. Wind Ryu, same comments as the Daphnis, more or less the same comments as the Daphnis. He can't glance, but his multipliers are a little bit lower, so I think Daphnis, Wind Ryu, they're both, you know, going to get a little bit of play next season, maybe a little bit more play than they did. It's nothing major, it's nothing, I mean, it's a buff, but it's not game changing. Wind Onimusha, she was sneakily already an S tier unit. I think she got buffed a couple patches ago where her skill 1 has a 50% chance to defense break, and it was a sneaky buff that a lot of us kind of missed because she had the Christina meme attached to her. I think the Wind Onimusha may legitimately be broken. I think we're getting like in the verge of emergency nerf territory. She is going to be the big winner of this balance patch by far. We're going to see her constantly. She may be enough to slow down the Oliver meta. 35% attack bar is absolutely insane. Skill 2 is going to be strip into Karma. Skill 1 is strip into defense buff if you put, defense break. And then if you put her on Despair, she's going to be constantly cutting with the opportunity to strip into stuns as well. I think she is beyond broken. And then just as, you know, an added benefit, she's also going to deal additional damage now, so she won't be a completely dead pick on that side either. As a disruptor, I think like she legitimately could be an emergency nerf territory. Beast Monks. Beast Monks also got leader skill changes. I'm going to group them mostly all together. I think these are really nice buffs for the Beast Monks. I don't know if it's enough to make Ritesh meta. I think Shazam was already amazing, so now the fact that Shazam... Here's the thing, most of these changes on the Beast Monk skill 1, all it really does is ease up rune requirements. So for high level Siege and high level RTA, I think these were all units that were already being built on crit rate, which means I don't think that this change actually matters all that much. If anything, it's a very minor nerf for... I don't know about their... I don't know their activation rates. I don't know if they get 25% activation. If they don't have 100% activation through skill ups, then it's actually a very minor nerf for Guardian level players and Tourney level and G3 level Siege players because they were already ruining their Beast Monks on crit rate. But for the broader game, for the other 90% of the game that I didn't just mention, this is actually a really nice buff that actually should make Beast Monks much more usable at like C3, G1, maybe G2 Siege, where you struggle to get that 100 crit rate and still build them with stats. On top of that, for Siege defense purposes, we no longer need to build them on crit rate to allow them to strip. So for Siege defense purposes, these actually could be pretty legit. I think Kumar in particular may actually get some play at tourney level Siege defense, and of course whatever, you know, guilds like Mali and the other top guilds are running often trickles down. So Kumar in particular, it's ironic because Wojo just said Kumar got a massive nerf. To me, I think Kumar got a pretty significant buff. I actually think Kumar in particular may wind up being on Siege defenses quite a bit because of the leader skill. Now, the other one out of this group that's super interesting is Chandra. Chandra is now a 24 speed lead with an attack bar boost. I believe he is the only monster in the game that does speed lead into attack bar boost. His overall kit doesn't synergize amazingly well with that. Like, he doesn't give attack buff, he doesn't do really much of anything other than that. I mean, he does lots of stuff, but he does lots of stuff that synergize with bruisers. So Wojo, yeah, but his skill 1 now silences, bro. That I would much rather have that silence right there. Strip into silence. You're not often trying to strip a whole bunch of debuffs. Strip into silence is freaking really, really strong, man. I think, to me, that's a buff, and then he also got an HP lead. So the skill 1 by itself is already a buff, and then throw in the HP lead, and I feel like he's actually probably the biggest winner out of the Beast Monks. I don't know, Shazam also... Shazam might be the biggest winner just because Shazam was always already OP. Like, Shazam was already super strong, and now he gets more buffs, and so... Front Lash, you are 100% correct. I stand corrected. Wally Young is speed lead, attack bar boost, and attack buff. So Wally Young is definitely the best speed lead attack bar booster in the game. But Chandra is the only one accessible to more people because he's not an LD5. I don't know what's going to happen with him because his kit doesn't synergize, but it is interesting that he is now the only monster in the game, not an LD5, that can do that. So I think we will see some use from him, maybe from Arena Offense, maybe an RTA. But I think Chandra, people are at least going to test him out. Whether or not he becomes relevant, I don't know, but people are definitely going to test him. I know Wojo feels like Kumar got a nerf. I personally feel like Kumar got a really big buff. I think the combination of the leader skill and the skill 1 silence is huge. And then the fact that you don't have to ruin him on crit rate means that you can actually... put him on Siege defense. And to me, that's a huge buff because Kumar's a really interesting unit. AoE silence, AoE HP scale damage, AoE cleanse. He has a support on skill 2. He's a really, really good bruiser style monster. You just couldn't keep him alive before. Now with that HP lead and not needing to build on crit rate, you could keep him alive, which means I think he could be one of the meta units moving into Siege defense next season. I could see Kumar being paired with a Dominic and either Nana or Mali, be pretty toxic. Kumar, Dominic, just off the top of my head, and of course the HP lead doesn't really matter if he's with Dominic because Dominic would have already been, but yeah, something like Dominic, Kumar, Nana could actually be quite interesting now. That strip into silence can be quite disruptive. So that's it pretty much for the Beast Monks. Eleanor, this is another monster that I feel, I gotta scroll down on this side too, right? Eleanor is another monster. I feel like she was already actually sneaky good and just didn't get as much appreciation as she deserves. So I think the extra HP recovery, like I was talking to an Eleanor owner yesterday because I obviously don't have her. And he said the extra 5%, and then if you factor in with artifacts, it's really more like an extra 6% heal. In a meta where everything is chip damage, that's actually pretty powerful, which I agree with. Throw on top of that, she's already got like passive glancing potential, and then she's got anti-crit on her skill 2. Her damage mitigation combined with the heal, I think she could be really, really good. Mei Hu Wang, the attack speed increase is interesting. I don't personally think he's going to get back into the meta. He was already strong. The issue with Mei Hu Wang wasn't that he was strong, because he was strong. The issue is that he doesn't fit the meta. And he still doesn't. So this doesn't really make him fit the meta anymore. I think it's a nice buff. I think it's an unneeded buff. I don't think it's going to change anything in the short term. But when the meta shifts, if Mei Hu Wang comes back into the meta, he's going to be a double S tier at least monster as a result of this. Dark Monkey King, I don't think this is what any Dark Monkey King owner wanted. I personally already thought the Dark Monkey King was super strong. All the people who've got him, Sun Zhao Wang or whatever, Sun Zheng Lao, whatever his name is, all the people who have him complain about him. Whenever I face him, I find him to be extraordinarily difficult. I think his issue is probably that he's very rune intensive, and most people can't put together the rune set required to make him shine. So this does not change that, but if you can put the rune set on to make him shine, he is extremely tough. When I face him in RTA, for example, a lot of times I actually find him harder to deal with than the Light Monkey King, which everybody agrees is like double S, triple S tier. Because this dude can strip into defense break, he steals debuffs, so he's like Onimusha with AoE CC and big damage. I mean, his kit is actually pretty broken. He stuns on 2 skills, he steals debuffs, he applies defense breaks. His kit is actually broken, always was. So this extra buff is helpful. I think the issue with him is just that he's rune intensive, and this buff does not change that. So most people who have him won't find any difference with him, but people who are able to rune him properly will notice a little difference. Chimeras. I think the Shan buff is going to be nice. I don't know that it's massively going to change how Shan is used. I think the Taeor buff is going to be nice, but this won't change how Taeor is used because Taeor is already used as a snipe unit. People aren't going to like not rune him. Actually, I don't know, because now you can get a critical hit based on speed with your squall. I take that back. Actually, I take that back. This eases the rune requirements on Taeor a lot, and it makes it much easier to give him attack and accuracy and speed. I think this is actually a really big buff to Taeor. I didn't think about it this way the first time. I think there's actually a really big buff to Taeor. I think for Lagmaron, I don't know if this changes much of how you would use him. I think it boosts his damage because Lagmaron was pretty much used as a CC unit. And then same thing for Shan. I think for Lagmaron and Shan, this boosts both of their damage. I don't know that this is particularly impactful, but it's nice for people who have them. All right, Beth, this makes sense. The buff on Beth makes sense. Again, I don't think it changes that much for her. I think for the people who use her, it's a really nice buff. I don't think it makes her more meta. For Rocky, this is actually interesting. Again, I don't think that this changes all that much for her, but for the people who use her, this is really nice. For Kraka, as a Kraka owner, I can tell you it's a nice buff. It is the wrong buff. Com2uS does not freaking understand this unit. Kraka's issue is that she cannot use her skill 3. So the skill 3 is the revive, puts units' skills on cooldown, gives them invincibility, but it cannot be used unless an ally is dead. So she literally just does not have a skill 3. So continually buffing the skill 2 and then buffing it with stuff that doesn't even have a 100% activation rate, it's the wrong buff. It's just flat out the wrong buff. Now, I can see Kraka being used slightly as now she's going to be a little bit more effective into buff-heavy opponent teams. So she's going to be a nicer counter to Riley and Shizuka. But it's the wrong buff. It's not what she needs. And the worst part of this is that by buffing the skill 2 again, they're indicating that the skill 3 can't be buffed, because now if they actually fix the skill 3, she'll be broken. Like, the skill 2 can't be this strong and then have them fix the skill 3. So wrong buff. I was actually disappointed to see this, even though she got buffed, because I don't feel like this is going to be something that makes me want to use her, because it's still all random activation rates. Now, again, as a Shizuka counter, I actually think this is pretty powerful, because even though it's 60% activation rate, it's 2 hits on an AoE. So, I mean, she'll have constant immunity, but she does no damage. She does nothing. All she can do is strip into stuns and strip into defense breaks, and that's just Chung Peng, but Chung Peng has a skill 3. So this is, yeah, she's like a weaker Chung Peng meets Masha type thing. It's just the wrong buff. It's the wrong buff. Okay, Belial. Same thing, same comment as above with the Beth. This makes sense. It always should have been that way. It doesn't really change much for him. Belial's just a cleave unit anyway. Arnold, this is, oh, excuse me, Leica. Leica is the other big winner of the balance patch. So the 2 big balance patch winners are Jiu and Leica by far. Leica will be all over the place in RTA next season. This is actually going to be really significant. Siege offense, siege defense, arena defense. We're going to see Leica everywhere. This is a really, really big buff for Leica. Is it broken? No. I don't think it's broken. There's so many multi-hits in the game. All they did was take a unit that used to be strong, that faded out of relevance due to all the multi-hits, and they rebalanced him to where he used to be. So this, like, as stupid as the Kraka buff was, this is the perfect, exactly what Leica needed. I like the Leica. I like the Leica buff a lot. This was very much the correct buff to give him, and it was a good buff. Zen. Zen is really interesting. I still really don't love the randomness of the buff distribution, but I think this is Zen is getting very close to being meta. Last patch I actually thought was going to be enough to make him meta. It wasn't quite. So they've made him slightly stronger again. They're kind of doing this the way they did Heigang, incrementally, bit by balance patch, so that they get the correct balance on him. Zen may be good enough to use now, or he may be just slightly too weak to use now, but he's getting really close. He's getting really close. Let me get caught up on chat right here. So Jolly Green said the BP has me conflicted, no nerfs and the buffs were kind of odd. So Jolly Green, one thing to keep in mind, SWC is going on, so I didn't expect any major nerfs. I thought this was going to be a relatively light balance patch because of SWC, and you said that at the end of your message. So this balance patch was, I'll be honest, this was better than I was expecting. It's not the best balance patch ever. There's no major meta shifts here. There's a lot of stuff in here that just makes your toys more fun. And that's fine. Like, just making your toys more fun is fine. The only monster in the BP I think was actually busted is GU, and that's just because everybody kind of ignored her before. But I think GU is going to be broken strong. Everything else in here, I think they just made our toys more fun. They gave us some interesting stuff to play around with, but I don't think there's going to be anything that creates major meta shifts. I think we get maybe, if anything, a little bit more parity, a little bit more balance overall, which is really nice. So I'm usually pretty hard on balance patches. I'm probably one of the hardest streamers on balance patches. I was pleasantly surprised by this one, honestly, and I mean, I was disappointed because none of my LDs were buffed, right? None of really my core units were buffed, so that was disappointing. But from a game balance perspective, I was pleasantly surprised. Considering SWC is going on, I thought this was probably more than I was hoping for. Curtis pulled Zen and Kashmir, so congratulations on the Zen and the Kashmir, man. That's awesome, bro. Michael, thank you very much. I appreciate the congrats, man. Really appreciate the congrats. I think I answered a couple of these and I missed a couple of these, so let me see. Marcus, you only have 15 energy, so I can only do one run. It wouldn't help. How do I feel about Fire Pure Vanilla with Ragdoll? Jolly Green, I think it's an interesting combination if you can get enough out of the comp. I'm not sure that really upgrades versus just using Riley, but I think she's worth testing. Like, I mean, that's the type of question you just have to, I would say it's worth testing. You just build them. I mean, it costs you nothing to build them on RTA runes, and then go run into, and then you just go run it in Goodwill, like we did earlier. When is Gianna gonna get buffed? Gianna never needs a buff. Veronica needs a nerf. Hopefully, Veronica gets nerfed in the next patch. Lima does need a buff, man. I didn't want to say it. Shiza said it first, so now I can say it. Lima needs a buff, but I honestly don't know what that buff could be. And she probably doesn't need a buff. She, like, after the nerf, she went from a 54% win rate unit, which was just stupid, to about a 50.5% win rate unit for the rest of the season, which is a little underpowered for an LD5 that's supposed to be top tier. She needs something that makes her win rate about 1% better. I think it could be as simple as maybe changing her immunity to 3 turns instead of 2. Like, leave everything else the same, but make it a 3-turn immunity. That might give her the balance that she needs, because it is a 4-turn cooldown skill on a 2-turn immunity. So there's a lot of gaps in there where she can get reset by Oliver. You can't run her on a revenge build anymore because she doesn't cycle enough. So I think like that, probably just making 2-turn immunity into 3-turn immunity would bring her back to that 51.5%, 52% win rate that you'd be targeting for a top tier LD5 from an RTA perspective. Wojo, I would say just test. I mean, I'm telling you my thoughts, but obviously practical use in the game is a totally different thing than what you read on paper. So before you dump Devils into Gyu, let's see how good she is. I think she's going to be broken, but maybe she just doesn't really fit the meta. You know, it's hard to see. Oh, you just said you'll wait and see how she performs. Okay. Novin, yeah, I still believe Charlotte is OP. I do think Figaro is going to be fun to play with. How I would ruin Tomo, I think Tomo can go either Violent or Despair. I kind of like Tomo more on Vio, but they both work. I know a lot of people run Tomo to act first on their team. I think that's probably the correct build because she gains 100% attack bar, so she's not guaranteed another turn right away. So I would probably just run Tomo on a super fast Vio Will build. Obviously, max accuracy is the key there. And Fire Cookie with Oracles, yeah, I could see that. All right, so now I'm caught up on chat. Let's move down a little bit more through, what are we at? We're at, we just did Zen. So the skill 2 for Zen and whatever the Light Shadowcaster is, that's nice that they added some damage. Is it enough for the Light Shadowcaster? I don't know because I don't have him. Again, I think Zen, we just need to see what happens. For Claire, the skill 3, the jet attack, I believe is Claire's skill 3, and basically what this is saying is she now has the potential to gain a full turn cycle on the skill 3 or 100% turn attack bar on the skill 3. To me, this is totally irrelevant because for the most part, most of us are using Claire's skill 2 first, and that's not going to change because the skill 3 is still, like, who cares if you defense break something and then you ignore their defense? It doesn't really make any sense. Claire's role is just as an AoE ignore defense, excuse me, AoE. She's just as a single target ignore defense unit. She's basically a Nat 5 Kali. I don't think that changes much. I think Claire and Kali are still about equal. They have different applications. Claire has better base attack and slightly, like, her multiplier is like 10% higher, but Kali has attack buff, speed buff, and invincibility. I think you'll still probably use Kali more often than Claire, but in certain comps, Claire remains better than Kali. So, this buff was totally irrelevant. It made absolutely no difference for Claire whatsoever. Wind Battle Angel, I haven't played around with her much yet, so I don't really have the ability to evaluate this. It looks like they're moving her in the right direction. If it's enough, I have no idea because I haven't played around with her. Carlos, I personally believe this may be a nerf. I don't think that's the intent, but just like they were trying to buff Van Cliff 2 patches ago and the effect was a nerf, and most of us thought it was going to be a nerf when we saw it, most of us who own Van Cliff. I personally think this Carlos is actually a nerf because the thing is 75% attack bar in most cases, like 9 out of 10 times, was already enough to give him a turn. So he didn't actually need to gain 10% more attack bar. I guess the one case where you could say this really matters is if Carlos himself gets a kill, then he takes another instant turn. So it changes his usage a little bit. Maybe it's not actually a nerf. Maybe it's just a lateral, but the fact that he's gaining less attack power, but he's only getting 25% attack bar, I don't think this is what Carlos needed, but kind of like Claire, these types of units are really hard to buff in a way that actually makes sense. I don't know that they could have actually done anything with Carlos that did make sense. He is just what he is. So it's not bad that they tried it. I'm not against this. Just because I think it's probably a lateral, it may make him more useful, or it may make him the same. I don't know. What up, Patty Sore? How you doing, man? Funny, because I was actually saying the balance patch, I was pleasantly surprised by this one. I thought they gave us a little bit more than I was expecting with SWC going on. Bell Peppers, Deborah is arguably the most valuable LD4. I wouldn't say best because she doesn't have much in the way of PvP purposes, but definitely the most valuable. Her passive is absolutely broken for all PvE content, but in particular solo R5. She eases the rune requirements on your solo R5 team like to nothing. Like, you can get to solo R5 so much faster than you could without her. Huge congrats on pulling her. I don't have her. She's one of the 2 LD4s I don't have, her and Martina. Martina being the actual best LD4 and Deborah being the most useful. Those are the 2 I don't have. Yeah, I'm happy they addressed Beast Monks. I mean, nothing in here actually benefited me. None of my LD5s got buffed except Kraka, which was the wrong buff and does nothing for her. Nothing in here benefited me, and some of the things in here might actually hurt me a little bit, but I still think that the patch itself was pretty reasonable. All right, Robos. As a group, we'll just talk about the Robos. Fire Robo was already somewhat meta. I think this boost on the Fire Robo is actually kind of scary. I'm not going to lie. I think Fire Robo is going to be really, really annoying in RTA. Like, for turn one players, annoying stuff is good. For turn 2 players, annoying stuff is not good. I think the Fire Robo is just going to be really obnoxious. I think he may actually become part of people's core, and we may have to deal with him on a regular basis. Dark Robo is intriguing. Dark Robo is going to be absolutely busted in 4-star Special League. It could be annoying on siege defense. I don't know how you get it into a comp where it gets to take a turn. Maybe something like Dark Robo and Kinky. But it could be pretty busted on siege defense. It's too much RNG to be used on any kind of siege offense, but it definitely could become viable for arena offense now. Whether it reaches RTA level, I don't know. But man, his kit is really intriguing. His kit's really intriguing. So we need to see how he plays out. Dark Robo could sneakily be one of the big winners of the patch. Light Joker, I think the Light Joker now becomes viable for certain siege offense and siege defense builds. Obviously, it has no impact for RTA, but Special League also could be some viability. So this was a really nice buff to the Light Joker. I think this was actually it was a decent buff, but the one big thing here, because it's a 25% chance when attacking, I don't know if that skills up, if there's activation rate. If it doesn't reach at least 50%, then he's not going to have any offensive application. But he could still have defensive application because of the RNG. If this reaches 50% through skill ups, then maybe he has some offensive application, but activation rates are just always scary on offense. Yeah, Patty, I don't have the Dark Monkey, so what I said earlier, maybe you would disagree. I said I've always felt the issue with the Dark Monkey is just that he's rune intensive. I feel like he's actually a very strong unit already. I have more trouble dealing with him than I do, for example, with the Light Monkey. So I felt like he was already a really good unit. Everybody who's got him says he needs a buff, but then when I face him, I struggle with him, so I felt like the issue was probably more that he was just rune intensive. Alright, Mermaids. Tetra, this is actually a very nice buff for those of you, or those of us who use Tetra on offense. This is really significant. I like this. I don't know if it's super impactful, but it's a really nice buff. The change to Cichlid, I dislike. Now, the thing with Cichlid here, this is a siege defense purpose. She has 110 base speed. And the attribute advantage means that she can now attack any enemy. So she's got Elemental King, essentially, which means that she can reset any enemy, which makes it harder to run. It gives her more RNG purpose for siege defense. The problem with this is I think the reduction on the skill cooldown was a bad choice, because now she's going to be much easier to bruise her. So I don't think they buffed her. I think if they had given her the attribute advantage and not reduced the skill cooldown, she would have been really intriguing for siege defense purposes. She was already not going to be usable for any kind of offensive build because she has 3 accuracy checks, so it's only a 70% chance. She was already not going to be viable in RTA for the most part. Sekhmet is still better because Cichlid's skill 2 is crap. So this was unnecessary for them to reduce the skill cooldown from 2 turns to 1, because at 1 turn you can proc right back out. So I like the idea, but I don't believe they should have reduced the skill cooldown time. I think on the whole she remains a unit that's not going to be used. So nothing changes because she was bad before, she's going to be bad now. Or she wasn't bad, excuse me. She was not good enough before, she's going to be not good enough now. That's a much better way to say it, because she's not actually bad, she's just not good enough. Beta now got 2 really interesting buffs. They corrected one of the major issues with Beta, which is cooldown times. Now, they didn't address the skill 3 cooldown. Beta's skill 3 cooldown really needs to have a 1-turn cooldown reduction for Beta to be viable for any kind of offense. However, Beta was already pretty good for siege defense, so I can see why they were afraid to reduce the cooldown further, because she was already good on siege defense. So this is, I feel like, a good midpoint to start buffing Beta. Giving her that little bit of extra HP, and then that little bit of extra HP and attack bar, and then getting reducing the condition on her skill 2 when she revives a unit. So I think overall this is a good starting point. It's probably not enough. She's still not usable on any kind of offensive teams, but she's still definitely not usable for RTA. She's still probably not optimal for 4-star Special League. But it does strengthen her on siege defense a little bit, and so they have to be careful not to make her broken for siege defense. So I think this is a good starting point. Michael, I do have Lima. Okay, so we talked about the Beast Monk leader skills previously. We don't need to revisit these. I'll just say this is way, way overdue. Definitely nice they did this. The Arnold leader skill right here, this is great because Arnold's one use is to counter Molong, so giving him an HP lead is actually really nice. So this was another very nice change with the Arnold leader skill. And then the skill descriptions I'm not going to go into, and the skill errors I'm not going to go into. So that's basically my review of the BP.